So today is going to be our first session in deep learning and neural networks. We'll be mostly working with two frameworks, which are TensorFlow and Keras, which are almost the same. So as you can see now, this is the TensorFlow website. So it is an open source library to help you develop and train machine learning models, and it has many benefits like easy model building, and for production wise, it's pretty good. And experimentation for research is also provided. And here are a few applications in ML problems where you first start with neural networks and then move on to advanced one like translation, in which you translate any language into English using TensorFlow and deep neural networks. Also, here are a few applications of TensorFlow where you have Airbnb listing classification basis on the photos using TensorFlow, and weather prediction using TensorFlow, and many more. So these are the companies that make good use of TensorFlow, right from Airbnb to Google to Twitter. And Keras is nothing but a wrapper for TensorFlow, where you have like various complicated TensorFlow operations that are wrapped into an easy API which can be called and executed. And that it runs both on CPU and GPU without any difficulty. Though bigger, like the deeper neural networks like ResNet or VGG 19 or 16 do require GPU in certain. So TensorFlow is mostly called like this, TensorFlow as TF, TensorFlow as TF. So only thing is that you get a lot of warnings. So you can use the warnings or filter warnings ignore to bypass this. So this is the version of TensorFlow we'll be using, 1.14, which is the latest version of TensorFlow. So in this notebook, you'll be seeing what TensorFlow really is. And in the next notebook today, you'll be building your first deep neural network, handwritten digit recognition program from images, which is nothing but the hello world with deep learning. So there is also one more deep learning library called Theano, which was in use before TensorFlow came out much recently. Theano was developed by Google, not Google, Facebook, Theano and PyTorch. But after TensorFlow came, these libraries have been like faded away, and they're not used much these days due to better efficiency and capabilities of TensorFlow and Keras. So TensorFlow mostly runs with tensors. So what is tensors is nothing but, if you remember in machine learning, you had worked mainly with vectors. Vectors are nothing but NumPy arrays. Like when you split the data into train, test, split, you have a data frame. But in essence, when it is passed to the machine learning model or algorithm, it is taken in as a NumPy array. So similarly, in TensorFlow, you'll be working with tensors, which can be a vector or a NumPy array, but we will be calling them tensors in this case. So it is nothing but an array-like object, and it can, for example, a matrix, or it can even be a scalar. It can even be an n-dimensional matrix, and so on. So what we do in deep learning is you simply translate the machine learning problem into functions on tensors. So which is pretty easily possible. For example, you can define your own activation functions, which you will see much later in the sessions. So here in the neural network, we'll be using certain conventions. So data will be denoted as X, weights as W, and thresholds as T. So whichever is a data set or an array, that is a tensor. So in this case, X is a tensor. So the weights as are an array of weight values. If you remember weights in machine learning, nothing but what a particular class of field, how much importance it has. That is weight. So thresholds are nothing but similar to weights, which you will see in the machine learning model building much later. And what a neural network is, it is nothing but a function of X, W, and T. X the data set, W the weights, and T the thresholds. So we'll just get into loading TensorFlow and just working with a few tensors in it. So it's better to import warnings and filter them out when you're working with deep learning libraries, as they cause a lot of warnings to make your notebook look a bit messy. So here we are calling TensorFlow as TF. and defining two variables. The first one is a TensorFlow's constant variable, which holds the value 5. And similarly, the next one is TensorFlow's constant variable, which holds the value 6. And I'll just show what x1 and x2 are. So x1 is a tensor. And similarly, what do you think will come for x2? About tensors. Tensors which hold the data. Okay. So it doesn't have any value. It is just a tensor. Let us try a multiplication operation between x1 and x2. Yeah, so tf.multiply does multiplication, but this is not the exact way of getting the result in performing TensorFlow operations. And there's another way of doing is just using the asterisk symbol. You can see it is not the right way of doing, and you're still not getting the output. So what is happening is that there's a graph, we can assume, and each operation in it is a node that is located within a graph. In case you want to see the actual result of this operation, you define a TensorFlow session. This is how you define a session, as tf.session. And since you defined result as TensorFlow multiplication operation between x1 and x2, we will print the results of session.run, in which we will run the result. Result is nothing but this. Now let us see how the output will look like. So this is how you run your operations in TensorFlow, be it training, retraining, or any mathematical operation or graph building. This is how it goes. So we can also assign an output variable as session.run of result and then print the output, as you can see here. So the result operation is performed, which is tf.multiply x1 comma x2, and the output is written. So next thing is that whenever you start a session, you need to close it so that you can free up the resources that are occupied when the session is running. Since TensorFlow and other deep learning frameworks occupy a lot of resources within your CPU or GPU, it is a good practice that you keep closing the session once you initiate it. It is done by basic, you define session as ses, as you can see here, and what you are doing is session.close. But after closing the session, it can still reference the output. You can still know what the output is, but you cannot run it again. Do you see what has happened? You get a runtime error. The other way to use session is, which is much more easy, dynamic, and flexible, is you can run it under a with loop. With tf.session defined as ses, output is equal to session.run result and print output. In this way, session exists only within this, which means it is local to this area only. Beyond that, it won't exist. So if you want to run multiple models in deep learning or execute a few graphs, this is how you execute a session. Okay, so this one actually closes the basic insight into what TensorFlow is. So next thing will be moving on into building our first deep learning model. We'll be having a list of numbers from 0 to 9, handwritten digits. What we will do is we will take the use of TensorFlow and build a model which is going to accurately predict what each handwritten digit is. So this is a basic neural network. This is the input x1, x2, x3, that you can see here. The first one is hidden layer 1 because it is bound between one hidden layer and the input. This is the hidden layer 2, and this is the output. So this is the neural network for a typical 3-class classification problem. Why 3-class? Is because there are 3 output nodes in the neural network. So hence it is a 3-class classification problem. And the hidden layer sizes. So there is no rocket science or hard math behind trying to get the right hidden layer size. It is actually up to you to describe how your neural network looks like. Advantages is that when you have a large data set and the problem is pretty complicated, so in that case, having a good number of hidden layers will be a great benefit in helping you get a right output and a good model. But on the other hand, a large number of hidden layers will cause your model to overfit when training. So each node in the layer contains an activation function. So with you look at this data entering. So this data will be passed to the activation function lying within each node, and the activation function is performed upon the data. The data is transformed and then sent to the next layer, and so on. There are actually various activation functions like ReLU, which is rectified linear unit, sigmoid, tanh, softmax, and so on, which we'll be exploring very soon. And these nodes contain the outputs. So if it is class 0, 1, 2, which are the outputs in this, 0 means don't get confused with the binary 1. This output node will be activated 1, 0, 0. So this is class 0. Else, if it is class 1, 0, 1, 0, and if it is class 2, 0, 0, 1. So that is how a neural network operates. So this is a single neuron in a neural network. So what basically happens is this is nothing but a summation, and an activation function is applied upon this. So this activation function is a softmax activation function, which you can see here, whose output is 0, 1. So this symbol is a softmax activation functions symbol. So this is how a typical node or a neuron looks like. This one. So you can set up TensorFlow using this, or if you already have an older version of TensorFlow and want to update it, you can put a minus upgrade to get it done. So I just load TensorFlow here. Yeah. So now we have TensorFlow. We have under TensorFlow's dataset section the imaged dataset to load and practice upon. So we will define imaged as TF the datasets imaged, where we are going to load the datasets, and we're going to define xtrain, ytrain, xtest, and ytest, which is already located within imaged data, to be defined as them. Yeah. So one more point to be noted is that neural networks, especially the deep neural networks, are really good at fitting data. And one big problem is that they tend to overfit upon the data. So what your goal as a data scientist is to do is you have to hope that they make sure that the neural network doesn't just memorize your data, but instead it generalizes and learns the actual problem and patterns associated with it. So let's just look what xtrain is. So this is a handwritten digits data set. It is nothing but an image, and since it is a digital image, it is treated as a NumPy array. You can treat images as NumPy arrays. You can load a JPEG image and convert it into a NumPy array. As you can see here, I think this is a 5, which is nothing but the same NumPy array which we had seen here. Similarly, we have other images, but one thing to be noted is that you have to convert, especially when you're coding with TensorFlow, convert your images into NumPy arrays and then push them ahead. So that way it can understand really good patterns in your image. For example, let us say all these whites in this square, within this square, right? Let's call them zeros, and these black points are there, right? Let us call these values between 0 and 1. Let us say the dark black are 1, and the gray colored and lighter grays are 0.5 and 0.25. And when you construct the final image by plotting it on Matplotlib, you get a 5. So this is how the neural network looks at an image. It tries to understand its patterns. For example, the shape of this number, how 5 is shaped like, how close the numbers are in this, in case when it looks at the NumPy array. So it takes all these patterns and features into consideration and then moves ahead in building a proper deep learning model. For example, let us say other numbers like 10. So since it is a handwritten digit, it tries to understand from as many examples as possible. So like this, we have many images like 1006, let us take, which is a 4, and so on. So we are going to pass all these images into a neural network, which we are going to build right now from scratch, and then see how it performs. So now let us look at the index, what it is. So this number is 5, and let us see 1006. 10064. So these are our training labels. So we are telling that, okay, to the neural network, I am passing you this particular image. This image is a 4. So try to identify patterns among all the 4s, and upon my testing set, you are going to predict what a 4 is and what a 5 is with a high degree of accuracy. Okay, so this is how you go ahead to train your neural network. So before moving on, let us normalize the data. So let us scale the data between 0 and 1, or even -1 and +1. So in our case, each pixel, do you notice each pixel here? Gray, black, gray, light gray, and almost white here. So each and every pixel in your entire data is a feature, and whose value ranges from 0 to 255. So let us scale this 0 to 255 range between 0 to 1. Okay, so how you do it is, under TensorFlow's Keras utils module, you have the normalize function. So let us pass the training data and define it as xtrain. Similarly, for the testing data, normalize it upon the testing data and save it as xtest. So okay, normalizing is done upon the entire data. Let us just look at one of our training data. So this is how it looks like. Do you notice any difference in this? Which is values between 0 and 1. And previously, this is how it looked like. Between 0 and 255. So any value between 0 and 255 indicates the intensity to which the color is. Where 255 is like jet black, which you see here, and 0 is just white. And the other numbers are nothing but the intensities of white, black, in this number. I'll just plot this one. Yeah, it is down here. So that is, after normalization, this is how it looks like. So the data is still the same. Like, there was no damage caused to the data. The patterns are still the same. However, 5 is, that is how it still looks like now. So now let us just move on to build our TensorFlow neural network model. So here let's go with a sequential model where the data moves forward, which is also known as a feed forward model, and not backwards for now. So let us add in a few layers. All right, so first things first, when you look at the shape of xtrain of 0, this is what the number is, and let's see the shape. It's a 28,28 image. So what we're going to do is, we have to flatten this into one dimension, which is 1, n. So this one, you're going to flatten this image into 1, n size, so that it can be passed into the neural network and be understood. So now we have a 28 by 28 image, right? We'll make it flat into 1 by 784. Why 784 is because 28 into 28 is 784, which is why we're taking this number. And Keras's flattened layer is built to just for this purpose. Next thing is, we'll add a flattened layer. I'll show you how it looks like in Paint. So this is the default image, you think, this one. So once you pass it to a flattened layer, this is how it looks like. So firstly, it is 28 by 28 image, and after flattening, it becomes, let's say, 28 squared is 784, 1 by 784 size image. So this is how what the flattening operation does to your image in this case. So sequential model is built, and then let's now add a flattening layer. So next thing, let us define a few hidden layers, as you can see here, and let's go with the small neural network layer, which is nothing but a dense layer. So any extra layer you want to add, any basic layer which does not do much operation, it's like let's say a simple neural network layer with any sort of activation function which you want. In that, you can call a dense layer. Also means a fully connected layer where each node in the neural network connects to each prior and subsequent node, just like how you have done here. Do you recollect this? So a dense layer is nothing but a node, this node, which is connected to each and every prior node. This one is connected to x1, x2, and x3, and subsequently to all the nodes within hidden layer 2. Hidden layer 2 node 1, hidden layer 2 node 2, and hidden layer 2 node 3. This node. Similarly, it applies to all the other nodes within the hidden layer. So you call this a fully connected layer. And how you do it? It is by adding a dense layer in your neural network, which is what we are doing here. The activation function is ReLU, which is nothing but rectified linear unit. Let us see how it looks like here. So this is the activation function which you are applying, in which f of x is given a value of 0 if x is less than 0, or it is given a value x if x is greater than 0. And its range lies between 0 and infinity. So let us define this one as an activation function. Now we have a new layer called dense layer with 128 nodes. So similarly, we are replicating this function, whatever we had done previously. And now let us add one more layer. So now we have 2 hidden layers in this dataset. And now let us define the output layer. So output layer is let us make it a dense layer with 10 nodes. 10 nodes indicating 10 outputs, different outputs, which range from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and whose activation function is softmax. Softmax is here, which is nothing but sigmoid or soft step. It has multiple names, and whose activation function looks somewhat like this. So this we are going to define a softmax activation function, and as I said before, the choice of activation function is entirely up to you. If you want their values to range between 0 to infinity, you can add a ReLU activation function, or -1 to +1, you have a tan H activation function, and so on. So let us define this final layer and take a good look at the model which we have built till now. So after you have defined the layers in your model, right, what you do next is you define the optimizer, the loss function, and by what metrics is the model going to train and become better and better through each iteration. Optimizer is nothing but the type of function which uses to optimize your model. We will get into different optimizers. You have NADM, ADAM, and many more optimizers. And loss function is like for example, you are trying to cook something. So in a typical electric stove, the amount of energy consumed is less versus the amount of energy consumed when you cook something with a gas stove, right? So there is a loss in it. There's nothing but a function which is used to calculate how much loss happens when you run a training instance or try to predict something from your neural network. So when you're building a deep neural network, this must be your goal. Have a low loss and a high accuracy. These ones we'll get into as we explore each and every component within the neural network. And by that time, we will be knowing which loss function to apply and which optimizer to apply for which problem. So let us choose, as we said, the ADAM optimizer, which is commonly used actually in the sense of neural networks. Is nothing but the amount of error that has occurred when you're trying to predict something. So what a neural network actually does is, it doesn't try to maximize or increase the accuracy, it tries to minimize the loss. So loss and accuracy share an inverse relationship in which a higher loss results in a lower accuracy, whereas a low loss, as you can see in this statement, results in a high accuracy. So you have many loss functions like sparse categorical cross entropy, or just categorical cross entropy, or binary categorical cross entropy, and so on. There are like over 100 loss functions. So we'll be exploring the really good ones and how to apply them. So now, if you recollect from your machine learning part, how you train a model is by model name dot fit upon training data, right? Epochs is number of iterations the training will happen for. So in machine learning, you have just one iteration. So you just pass the data as it is, get it trained, and get your model out, right? So here it goes through multiple iterations, trying to figure out the best model possible from the training data. Not to be confused with hyperparameter tuning, in which you pass the parameter grid and it goes to different iterations of the model. But here also what it does is it tries to adjust the weights. If you recollect, we have described what weights are here before, but not in that much depth. It adjusts the weights in the model, something which is x, which is multiplied by x, which is x into w. The weight value is adjusted in every iteration till you get the optimal weight value, which correctly describes your output. So where were we? Yes, we have defined the model here, defined the dense layers, compared the model with our Abdem optimizer and sparse categorical cross entropy loss function. And now let us run the training of the model. Compilation is done. So keep this in mind. Even if you define the model right, you have to compile the model before you train the model. So that's one thing in deep learning. Do you notice anything here different? So if you can see, the training accuracy is 97% in recognizing handwritten digits and a loss of 0.07, which is pretty good for a model which has less epochs. Yeah, defend this neural network with 2 epochs and let us see how it functions. You notice the accuracy increasing from 60% to 91%. And this one, it picks on the weights from this model and tries to get a better accuracy than the previous one. So now that is loss in accuracy for this data. So we have been able to correctly classify any handwritten digit between 0 to 9 up to a 96% accuracy level. So now let us test the model upon a testing data. This is a training accuracy upon training data. So let's get the validation loss and validation accuracy by evaluating upon the testing data and print the same. So do you notice this pattern again? Again, it showed you how it went. You have an testing accuracy of 96% and a valid testing loss of 0.1. So this is the testing result upon your data.
Yeah.
So this one closes up our first Hello World program of deep learning.